1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast. Wednesday show live. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hello and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Royal Blue Podcast. We are live on YouTube and I am your host Ian Croll. Joining me in the Royal Blue studio today, making a rare Wednesday appearance.
Oh, yeah.
Gavin Buckland.
Rare Wednesday appearance, yeah.
It's weird because Tony Scott
I know what Tony's doing. I don't know why Tony's not doing Wednesday, by the way.
But he did the Monday.
Yeah.
You're doing the Wednesday. It's a bit of a swap around, so it's quite weird.
I know exactly why that is.
Cheltenham?
Yes.
Well, he said to me he was just working from home.
Yeah. So no, it's good to shake it up, you know, midweek fixture.
No, definitely. When I asked you if you were going to come on, if you'd like to come on, I genuinely thought you were going to say no, you couldn't, but you are available. Which is
I was available because I knew exactly why I was invited when you said about coming on Wednesday. About who normally does Wednesday and why they wouldn't do Wednesday. Though I believe there was an article in the Guardian. They said about everybody watches Cheltenham in Benidorm now.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Is that the place to go for it?
That's the place to go.
Rather than actual Cheltenham itself.
€1 a pint. Yeah. So that's very interesting. But I'm not a horse racing fan, so.
All good anyway, other than that?
Yeah, but there's a few things happened since I was in on Friday morning.
Yeah,
definitely. Which we need to discuss.
Couple of announcements on the Friday.
Just, there's been quite busy, and built out as we discussed all the changes and things like that.
We've also got the Echo's sports content editor, Big Blue, Paul Wheelock, back on the show. You okay?
Yeah, always a pleasure, mate. Yeah, not bad.
Do anything with your evening last night? Watch much football?
Yeah, I watched some game. Yeah, it was. Moyes jokes about it, didn't he?
He did
saying what game was on?
BBC events or something like that.
Some BBC events, wasn't he, for the unveiling of Bill Kenwright's bus, wasn't it? Statue kind of thing. And it's he joked that, like, is it a way of avoiding the Liverpool game? I said, well, what game? What's game going on? No, me and Gav were speaking before. I know from an Everton point of view, it's quite nice that they're not going to win that trophy, but it was a brilliant game of football. It was a brilliant game of football.
PSG impressed me, to be fair.
Yes.
I completely missed the first game, so I didn't know exactly what was in store. But yeah, I guess.
And although we think that type of stuff's unattainable, is Aston Villa in and around in the Champions League, and will go further than Liverpool, you would imagine. And when they open up the Champions League to 5 places, which I think will be next year, probably in the longer term. You could have this position where 40% of the Premier League we played in Europe in the following season, and that opens up enormous opportunities for the non. I was going to say traditional big clubs, but say traditional big six. Big Six has been traditional for about 8 years.
Yeah, and two of them are just above us, aren't they?
And I can't see that changing either, really. And so there's big opportunities. If we get our revamp under the Freakins spot on, there's big opportunities, I think, for us, where those type of games that you saw at Anfield yesterday could be at, as I said, Goodison at Bramley Moor. It was interesting to see on LinkedIn. It was the anniversary of the Fiorentina game today, I believe.
It is, yeah.
That was probably one of the most heartbreaking games.
That I know a more heartbreaking game than did the Fiorentina game that happened on March the 12th.
Go on.
And likewise, one of the best games Everton have ever seen at Man United in the FA Cup on March the 12th, 1983. Absolutely fantastic. We had 15,000 fans there, 60,000 attendance. And we played brilliantly. Got beaten Frank Stapleton 92nd minute. And a lot of the team that became successful played in that game. And I think a lot of them started off the game as boys and finished as men.
Yeah. Okay.
And, Ratcliffe, Sharp, Heath, Sheedy, and so on. And it was a fantastic game, fantastic occasion. The crowd noise was so loud that the Granada TV microphone shattered.
Wow.
Because the noise of the crowd. So hopefully these aren't going to shatter today. But yeah, that was a fantastic game. One of me in my top 10 Everton games ever. Even though we got beat 1-0, because the performance was fantastic. The backing of the fans was fantastic. The atmosphere in the ground, because Old Trafford's such a great ground, was fantastic. And in the context of what happened to the team afterwards, you can see that's where it probably started. And it's one of my most cherished Everton games. That was a brilliant match.
Okay. Well, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll have just seen that I've on our graphics, I left the old picture in by accident, so I've just had to install the new picture in. So you'll have seen that live on YouTube. You'll have seen me inserting that on the stream. So slight mistake there. Busy morning, and I've obviously forgotten to put it in. But now we have the correct caption and picture of Howard Webb, obviously of what we're going to be discussing.
Oh no.
We've got to do it.
Yeah, we've got to.
Today's agenda then, obviously big game for Everton at Goodison Park on Saturday. We're going to look ahead to that with the usual team selection and score predictions. We'll also take a look at the full VAR audio from the Everton vs Manchester United penalty incident, which was released this week. The current head of the PGMOL, Howard Webb, has made some comments on his little mic'd up show with Michael Owen. I take it you guys have both seen that.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've not actually physically seen it, but I've seen the transcript of it. Yeah.
Okay, we'll also discuss the messages of support from a handful of Everton players aimed at Everton's director of football, Kevin Thelwell. So plenty to get through. Any questions as well or comments? We are live, so take part in today's stream and get them in. As always, give us a thumbs up, drop us a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Support is greatly appreciated. I think we'll start with Kevin Thelwell. Gav, we'll start with you first.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've discussed at length that director of football, Kevin Thelwell, will be leaving in the summer. But, since then, I guess, since the announcement on Friday, there's been a bit of an outpouring, really, of messages from a number of Everton players. I think Adrisagana Gay, Tim Idaboomen, Jake O'Brien, I think Decore as well. Are you surprised by this?
He was at Anfield last night, wasn't he?
He was, yeah.
With
Khabib.
I'm not really. I think Thelwell comes across, when I've seen him interviewed, comes across as a really decent, nice guy, doesn't he? Mm-hmm. And as a player, your relationship with the director of football is not the same as with the manager, isn't it? No. When Dice left, those players, I mean, they might have done it. I don't know, seen the full quotes, but your relationship's slightly different, isn't it? So it's a bit like an uncle, I suppose, compared to your dad, isn't it, really? Relationship. And so, yeah, I'm not surprised, but not because of that, because he seems like a really, really good guy, doesn't he? Thelwell, when he's been he's been on screen, and yeah, so that's always good to see. And I think Thelwell I think director of football, I think it's a good job to have, because I think the demand for directors of football is probably far greater than the number of people who can actually do the job. You know, it's not like Football Manager where after there's one job and there's five managers after a director of football. It's probably the opposite, isn't it? 5 clubs need one, and there's only one person who can do it. And I think he'll get a job easily. I'm not sure. I've heard stuff that I want to go back to the US, but I'm not surprised. He seems like a decent guy, and good luck to him in the future. And I said on Friday, I think he's done a good job at Everton. I wouldn't judge him by was that a good signing or not a good signing? And because he had more good signings and bad signings, that makes a good job. A lot more to it than that. And he spoke about the constraints he was under, didn't he? In his statements, and I think we need to take account of that as well. And I think I think it was mentioned on Monday, wasn't it, about Dyche on Monday's podcast that treats him the same as Dyche. You know, that good job in a difficult circumstance. I think pound for pound, I think that did a better job. To be honest with you,
okay.
And it goes with my good wishes, and obviously with the good wishes of the players as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Gav just joked about it there. To be honest, like, didn't seem like that. I'm not trying to stick the boot in on Dyche, but it seemed like Dyche didn't get any messages of support in the public eye anyway. He might have got some privately, but like you say, it's a little like Gav joked about it, but there was more support for that than maybe what Dyche's.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose I remember in the summer when Ira Boonen was interviewed after he signed, and I think Jake O'Brien was the same, and I think they both referenced fell well in the negotiations. So he was clearly playing a key part in convincing these players to come to Everton. So he could have been the one at first before even Dyche and now Moyes, who's got that kind of relationship with probably the families, the agents, because a lot of work goes into transfers before they're actually done and dusted. And yeah, from I don't think he's disappointingly, I would say, I don't think he's ever really done anything with the Echo, and I still find from a personal works point of view, I find that disappointing. I think I know there's been opportunities where he could have come because we've not had a chance to speak to him ourselves, but I know when he's been on, obviously, Julia's podcast, where he was very good. I think he's done things like with training Gav Goro, and he does come across as a good guy, and I'm with you, Gav. I think overall he's done a pretty solid job, really, because I agree with a director of football model, but I almost think, and this could probably lead into the conversation we're going to have later, do you have a head of recruitment within that reporting into a director of football or a CEO? Because surely a director of football, it's a huge job. It can't be just about transfers, but I think what he will be judged on is transfers fell well, and I think he's done a pretty good job on that, because not from the hits and misses and maybes, which we could go through, it's the background and the situation he's had to deal with, really. He's had to negotiate a really, really tough terrain, and you know, we've stayed in the Premier League. And I think there's a few players, if he takes credit for them, who are going to be pretty good assets going forward. I know there were some bad ones, but I think that's a lot with the case with a lot of recruitment, isn't that? It's hard to be perfect all the time.
I think it's an interesting point that you bring up, that he's obviously never spoken directly to the Echo or however you want to describe it. I think from a professional point of view, I think we'll all be, like you say, slightly disappointed. I think if he had more of a relationship with the journalist, and he probably just clearly didn't want to speak to on that side of things, but maybe there would be a better understanding from both parties.
Yeah, I think certainly on the record kind of thing. And that, again, viewers, listeners maybe look at it and go, well, it's okay. You know, we can go through, the Everton site. He has communicated quite a lot, as you know, at the end of every transfer window. But I think and this is not just me speaking as a journalist at the Echo, as a supporter as well, I would have liked to have heard from him a little bit more. And again, I don't want to take the conversation too far down the road, but because if a sporting director or a director of football is going to take ownership of transfers, their head's on the block, isn't it? And I think Moyes has alluded to that at times, hasn't it, really? If you make a signing, it's almost like you have to delegate, you have to say this was his signing, really. So not heard as much as I would have liked to have heard from him. But listen, players have come out and spoke highly of him, so he's clearly done a good job behind the scenes. It's
a good point, but it's modern football for you, isn't it, really? I mean, and the landscape of how football is covered and who says what to whom has changed entirely over the last 10, 20 years, hasn't it?
Who's responsible for what, though, as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I'm not talking about Everton here. Football clubs are content providers themselves, aren't they?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if you got on want to do an interview, if your director of football needs to do an interview about something, well, you're going to do it yourself, aren't you? And get the numbers for advertising purposes rather than give it to somebody else. Not just on local media, just like any media.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a reflection not so much on the jobs that journalists do. It's just a reflection of the modern world, isn't it? Really, not beyond football. And and I think that there's an element of me that says that I think that's wrong, because you do need
conflict
a little bit of it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm not just talking about Everton, just talking generally.
Yeah.
And there needs to be a bit. If you view football clubs as community assets and not businesses, then there's an element there that therefore you should speak to your community, isn't it? Really, if you're part of the club, if you view them as community assets, and I'm not as a business, and I think there is a little bit of in me that thinks people should be held accountable, not just within the club, really, and you should communicate. Interestingly, we might talk about Angus Canary has been on Leeds podcast, hasn't he, and stuff.
The big fan
I like that. I like that.
Like fan ones.
Yeah, I like that.
Square ball.
So I think it's an interesting point that Paul says, and managers talk. I mean, managers talk because they're contractually obliged to, and they don't just you sit down and just, let's have a chat. I mean, there's all sorts of generally speaking, off the record stuff. But I think that's a shame, and I think not for two reasons. Because I think people should be more accountable publicly, but I think second is you get the personality of that person, look at them in a different light, and when they're not within their own confines of their own business, and but it's not going to change. If anything, I think it'll be even more tightened up. Yeah. To be honest with you, and as a fan, I think that's wrong. It goes back to what we were talking about on Friday, wasn't it? About the book last book about players, years ago, 40 years ago, go on the press, wouldn't he? Go, I'm not happy. I've been dropped. I want to transfer. I'm seeing a manager on Monday. That's just great. That's just and you don't see that anymore. And this is an extension of that, isn't it? Really. And I think I'm not talking about Everton here, just talking about generally in football. I mean, because Everton have been quite open on a few things, and but he's one I think who's suffered a little bit because of that.
I think if you questioned him on it, though, well, he would defend his case a little bit. The interview that he did with the club, you could argue and maybe criticise that those questions are obviously pre-checked. He knows exactly what's coming and it's easy. But I think he would argue back, well, I did an interview with Julia Bold at the BBC. Yeah. That is obviously a different media outlet. You could say the BBC got a larger audience than anyone else, so that's why we put it out there. But I do agree with Paul to an extent, and that's not us being.
What, agree with what? Sorry.
Well, that he probably could have done a little bit more.
Well, he could have done absolutely. Because I think he's done a good job. I don't buy into this transfer business whatsoever. It's like people say. I think we spoke about Monday. Beto, say. £26 million, right? How much did Kevin Fowler have to spend on Beto? Nothing. It was just he had no money, did he?
Yeah.
So he's basically looking for strikers who would go for nothing. That's it. The club would release him for nothing, and that narrows the number of strikers. So the number of strikers that you're looking at from about say 50 to about 3 straight away, doesn't it? It's not nothing, obviously, because there's a payment further down the line. But in terms of what we didn't have £26 million to buy a striker, and we bought Beto with £26 million. We had nothing to buy a striker. It was just a promise that we pay the club, whoever was willing to sell us a striker, some money down the line at an increased value more than what the players was worth, because that's what the club get as part of the deal. And I think so. You need to look when judging his transfers. You need to look at the way the deals were structured. O'Brien, I think, falls into that category as well. And so, but it's a lot more than that. As we said on Friday, it's about keeping us in PSR. Managing the wage bill so that doesn't get out of hand. Being a bit imaginative in your sales, which we have been, and I think within that context, if you look at where the club is now, and I think he might have said this, on the playing staff and in terms of the makeup of the squad, and the stability of the squad compared to what we've got now and what we had when Thelwell came, I think are two completely different things. I think it's vastly improved. And he's had to sell big players, two or three big players in that time, hasn't he? Richarlison, Gordon would be two of them, wouldn't he? And so in that context, yeah, I think he's done a very good job. People may disagree with that, which is fine.
You could argue, sorry to interrupt, just with the Richarlison one, you can never foresee what a player will become after he leaves and whether there'll be a drop-off. But I think the PSR scenario with that almost like blankets the fact that Richarlison has been really poor for Spurs and that Everton have
probably been injured, hasn't he, most of the time?
But Everton has clearly got the best years of Richarlison's career.
Yeah, well, and he'd probably say the same, wouldn't he? Both in terms of his own performances and probably his own well-being and being loved by the fans and stuff. I wouldn't have him back though.
No, I agree.
And I get that. I think Gordon was probably, that's 50-50, but Gordon, I think Gordon was sold as much that we needed the cash for the stadium as much as the PSR issue, to be honest with you. And that's the other thing, isn't it? Some of our sales have been cash sales, not necessarily PSR purposes, being like because we needed the cash for the ground, and so he's had to keep the club running generally. So he's been operating not just as from the football side, he's been operating from the business side, hasn't he? The wider business, which is director of football. That's not a position you want to be, and so in that context, you can't just say Judd Selwell say, but Mopay was rubbish. Okay, yeah, there's always. Everybody buys bad players. And then the Mopay deal would probably end up being even. It's that wider thing of what his remit was when he came into the squad. Came into the club on in January, 2022. That I spoke about on Friday. It's the wider thing, and I think if you look at what he's operated under, the conditions he's operated under, the makeup of the squad and the strength of the squad compared to when he took over and when and taking into account all those factors about who he's had to sell. He's had 3 different managers working with. I think he's done a blooming good job. It'd be my say, but like a lot of others, there's weaknesses within that. I think the academy's been let to.
No, he certainly divides opinion. I've seen people say on Twitter he's been terrible, but one thing that I've seen, Paul, the past couple of weeks, probably more so the past couple of days since these decisions have been made, is Everton are now being ruthless. So even though Thelwell's been clearly held in high esteem by the players, people in and around the club, for me it's probably still not the incorrect decision to let him go. It probably is the right decision. It just obviously we're still unsure about what the next phase is going to be, I guess.
Yeah, it's just for me now. I think they needed to get that decision out there. It's obviously it could be been done a couple of months ago, we don't know, but it needed to be communicated now that safety's more or less guaranteed, isn't it? Because we need to know the structure now, because obviously we're going to have a CEO in place. We've got a manager who I can imagine are on a similar level, or Moyes is reporting into the CEO. But if we're not going to have a director of football, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of way we go now with transfers particularly, or is there going to be kind of, he's going to be head of football operations, because I imagine that was incorporated into Thelwell's job kind of thing. I'm interested to see who the next appointments are, because it clearly shows that Moyes has got a bit more power than maybe Deitch had, but we've now got a fully operational CEO as well, because, to every credit to Colin Chong, he's been an interim in that while overseeing a huge stadium build as well, who's staying on as well. So I imagine the CEO's going to... We shouldn't have had one, have we? We've not had a full-time one. But I from the transfers, which, again, Gav's rightly said, a director of football's not just about transfers, but it becomes so kind of everyone links the two. Right. I just wonder, it seems like we're going to get ahead of a recruitment, which a lot of clubs have had. But I'm just interested to see what comes next now, because if we're not going down the director of football model, and they've said it's going to be a wider sporting remit, isn't it, across, I'm interested to see who else comes in and who reports into, I imagine, into
anecdotally you hear stuff, don't you, and you listen to people, it's going to be like some sort of like transfer committee, isn't it, head of recruitment, Moyes, possibly the CEO, all that type of stuff, those type of roles, which is all very well and good, and I think it was mentioned in your but the sustainability of that, I think that was mentioned possibly in your pod on Monday, which I get. But ultimately, somebody's going to make a decision, haven't they?
Yeah.
Somebody has to be, right, okay, we're going to buy that player. You know, because what happens is if you have 3 or 4 people involved, and I've seen this before, what happens is you end up making compromises all the time. Or I tell you what, you allowed me, I allowed you to buy that player. I tell you what, now it's my team, I'll have that player, you know what I mean? Ultimately, somebody has to be responsible, and and everyone's got to work well together. And I think that can become, that can be a blocker, I think, on occasions. And as I say, sometimes that means you don't get the best, who you wanted because of the relationships between people. It'd be interesting to see how that works out. I'm not totally against it because I get the reason why you want to do it from sustainability, that the manager goes, then we can just lost another manager into that structure, or if your head of recruitment goes, I get it, but I still don't think it's ideal. At the back of my mind, I was thinking about this before, is like it was mentioned on Friday, but was this what Freakin groups envisaged? But that they were going to come into Everton and have this like sort of like flat management level, one management level of like head of recruitment, I don't know, technical director, whatever you call it, Moyes making the decisions, or did they want a director of football? But because Moyes has come in, done a really good job, we're going to go we're sort of like a compromise. I'm just wondering whether, and this goes back to Dyche, really, and it's a bit of a mad thought. I'm just wondering whether the Freakins think now is we've got a structure that we didn't want, but we've been sort of had to look at because of Moyes' success, is if we'd hung on to Dyche and not sacked him, we would have stayed up, because I don't think the other 3 teams would have caught us up by the looks of it. And therefore, in the summer, we could have put into place what we wanted. And I'm just wondering, in the back of their mind is, and this is a bit of a mad thought, is whether actually, if they kept Dyche on, we would have been in the Premier League, undoubtedly, because the other 3 teams are rubbish, and we would have picked up enough points, and we would have been able to put in the summer exactly what we wanted. What we've been forced into is a little bit of a compromise that actually is not ideal for what we wanted in the structure of the club. And I'm just...
Do you think that you're trying to say they potentially regretting sacking Dyche?
Yeah, I think I'm not regretting. I think not regretting is the word, but I'm just... They'd be understandably thinking that if we'd hung on to Dyche, we would have stayed in the Premier League and got the structure of the football operations that we wanted in the summer. But because
and let Dyche go,
and let Dyche go, then But
they could still have all that, but
they could. But Moyes is a different. They could have fit the manager into the director of football operations and all that type of stuff. They could have fit the manager in there.
It
needs Moyes to play ball.
Absolutely,
with this. I think that's the big thing.
It goes back to, have they got something that they wanted to put in, but have they been forced to compromise? I get why we all know that why Dyche should have been sacked. But and this is, but I did say this at the time, is that there is a little bit with Dyche. It's okay, we're doing rubbish at the moment, but we've probably got enough in us to stay up. And do we want to just keep it going to the summer? I get the Bramley Moore bit in that as well. You know what I'm saying now, isn't it? Have they been forced into doing something that they don't necessarily...
Almost shocked by how good Moyes has done.
Yeah.
Isn't there a stat?
Yeah, absolutely.
The stats of the league, if you look at it, if we were still on the points that we were on under Dyche, it'd still be above the 3 now, wouldn't it?
Wow.
I think isn't that the case?
I think that'd be 19, 20, whatever it was.
However,
you know what I'm saying here is actually that was one of the things about sacking Dyche. One of the things about the argument for keeping Dyche, whatever it was, it would give you the opportunity to them to do in the summer what they wanted to do after football structure is. And they could have done that, I think. And I said that at the time because the 3 below us were so poor. They've now been forced into something actually that perhaps they didn't want to do because they've sacked them. And it's just an interesting...
I don't necessarily agree. I think we're getting a lot of comments here as well, so I'll read them out as well. But I kind of agree with these, that Moyes coming in has obviously transformed the club in the past 2 months. I don't think there's any shadow of a doubt with that. I think the results that we've had over the past couple of weeks the teams in the bottom three, it shot them to death. Now you're never going to know, are you? If we'd have lost every single game under Sean Dyche, say if Sean Dyche stayed and we lost every single game, that could have galvanised them. I think a part of their losing streak and not picking up points has come from the fact that Everton have just moved away.
Wolves are down there, aren't they? I mean, and I think one of the reasons we sacked Dyche is a couple of the teams below us have got points. I think our last win, after our last win, the bottom three all won, didn't he? Some close the apple. No, I get why they sacked Dyche and stuff like that. Totally understand it. But what I'm saying is one of the things now in retrospect is, and I'm sure you thought this at the time, and I said that on the podcast, is it just, if you want the structure we want, let's just get through to the summer. Let's just or keep Dyche a little bit longer, because we will probably stay up anyway. And as a consequence of sacking Dyche, I don't know. I agree. They may have got a structure now that actually they didn't want it.
I don't necessarily disagree. I think I'm not going to go back on what I said, because I remember saying a couple of months back that the ideal scenario was that Sean Dyche keeps winning football games and he stays on, and then we start afresh. But we're obviously going to start afresh in the summer anyway. Look, I think if Dyche had stayed, we'd be nowhere near where we are now, and we'd still be in a relegation fight.
I'm not saying that. I'm just looking at. We're looking at, from a fan's perspective is one thing. I'm looking at it from the owner's perspective, and
I think they'd be happy with the choice, because it's their choice, isn't it? I think it'd be their choice.
That's fine. They know what they're going to get.
It's just interesting to see if they would have gone down the director of football model, and you just they wouldn't have said it at the time, would they, to be fair? And I think like the communication they've done so far has been excellent, but it is interesting because it's you look at director of football models and like you look what's happened, even though it is a very modern phenomenon now, and given the amount of work that football managers have to do outside of just actually coaching, that you can see why they're a requirement. But I'm a bit kind of pragmatic about it, and I think if this was the decision all along that we were going to get rid of a director of football, we're going to get a CEO, head of recruitment, manager, I'd be okay with that. Because let's face it, probably Macheri's fault for most of it, but I wouldn't say the models particularly worked at Everton, and I think there's other clubs as well to suggest that it's not particularly worked either. But as I say, it comes back to me. It's like a bigger. I say I'm delighted Moyes is back. Like I in retrospect, looking at how bad the bottom three are, Dyche may have struggled on and we would have survived anyway. Yeah. But the lift it's given to the club is absolutely massive. We were absolutely hating our final season at Goodison Park. And I don't think we would have had the moments we did against Liverpool, for instance, or going 3-0 up against Tottenham without Moyes coming in. So. I'm well behind that. I'm just interested to see what comes next, because Moyes is a brilliant manager. I know for a fact he's got the club at heart and that he will with the best interest. But I'm just interested to see where it goes. Do we say now to David Moyes, you are in charge of transfers, like he probably was in his first spell, where Bill Kenwright was obviously had a great working relationship, and Moyes proved fairly early on, didn't he, how good at recruiting he was. Game's changed a lot since then.
Recruitment's changed a
lot since then. I'm just interested. It's not critical of Moyes. I'm just interested to see how it's going to work.
Obviously, any decision that you make in football, to an extent, is a risk, isn't it? Let's face it. So we don't know what's going to happen. We're in a good moment now, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. But in the summer, we could sign a load of shocking players, and we could have a terrible start.
This is the thing.
I don't think we will.
We're going to have to sign a lot of players, and I know there's already been links with some of the. I don't want to go off the tangent here, like the West Ham right back, Kufalu's 32. But we probably, even though I think what Felwell did do well, I think he's brought some players in with potential resale value. Your likes of Njai and Garner, Irabuna. I know it's still early days with him, but you could imagine if they forced their way into the first team, if we have to sell eventually, or a bigger club comes in for them, we're going to get a bit of money back. But I think we probably may have to get used to that into the summer. I think we may be getting a few 30-year-olds and stuff like that and free transfers, because there's just so much work to be done in the summer.
I think another thing in the plus box for Thawal is we've managed to hold on to Brandwaite, haven't we? We've manoeuvred stuff around.
Yeah.
I think a negative in Thawal, by the way, just for balance, I think I'm not sure the Calvert-Lewin situation is being handled by the club or the player. To be fair,
I'm gonna counter the Brandwaite one. I'm not. There's no
combative move today.
There's no not being critical towards Thelwell, but I think seemingly there was only one club interested in Branthwaite, and that was Manchester United. And I think he knew, I'm not going to Manchester United unless I'm, given a ridiculous amount of money or, enough money came in. I mean, look at the state of United now.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not the United of old,
but we managed to keep hold of him, haven't we? That whatever happens, we managed to keep hold of him. And for this season, which I think is, that's good. But we won't know about this. I mean, until a few years down the line. But you do suspect that what you've heard and seen, reading between the lines, there's going to be some sort of transfer group, isn't there? And sometimes that can work, and that's worked before, but that can fail.
Well,
anything else, when you've got a committee, can fail.
I still want to talk about that, and I'm conscious of time, but I want to read out a few questions as well. Mm-hmm. So let me read out a few questions, and I'll come back to the dynamic of what we're going to potentially. Obviously, we can only speculate at this moment in time because there's no decisions being made.
They should do it as a podcast, shouldn't they? Their meetings.
Should do, yeah. I'd defo watch that. Terry Dactyle.
Have you got his name right?
I think so. Yeah. They had to act because Dyche was taking us down to the last match scenario. It was too risky. Danny Church, I'm glad Dyche is gone. Moyes is in. He's moved us up a couple of places more than Dyche, which brings in more money. Nash, EFC, imagine how stressful Goodison would be with Dyche. Now we have months of planning. Bob says, I think it's in reference to you, Gav. Is this lad drunk? we were going down with Dyche, no question.
I'm not. I know. Listen, I haven't said they should have kept Dyche on. Well, I totally get that. Said that Dyche should have gone. Right, absolutely. Right, and that's from a fan's perspective. My perspective. What I've said is, from the owner's perspective, who had a plan. If they had a plan to bring a director of football in and a structure in, with a young, whatever you would call a manager, is they, one of the things about sacking Dyche is they probably had to throw that away, possibly to bring Moyes in, which has obviously happened. Okay, so they're now going down a different route to what they possibly planned. What I'm saying is, given what's happened since December, they may have looked back and thought, well, actually, if we just hung on with Dyche for a bit, there may have been clear water for a period. We could have, it may not have been pretty, but we kept hold of him, and that would have given us the opportunity to put the plans in place to the club that we wanted to do during the summer. That's what I'm saying. No. I'm not saying they shouldn't have sacked Dyche.
I know.
And there's people saying that, I think that we shouldn't have sacked Dyche. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, I think in the back of the owner's mind, whoever, the people who run the club, the Freakins, I'll be very surprised if they're doing something in business that they don't want to do because of circumstances. They might just be thinking back, well, we might have been able to do what we wanted to do with the club in the summer if we'd have kept hold of Dyche the way things have gone. I'm not saying they shouldn't have sacked Dyche, obviously not, but it's just something that the way it's panned out, isn't it?
James Graham has made an interesting point, which I agree with. He's basically saying, who's saying we would have got someone better in the summer than Moyes anyway? Because when you think about it now, Moyes has obviously come in to keep us up. That's been his mandate, and he's done that. He's going to do that. Even if a new manager / a new director of football had complete backing in the summer, that only is going to work to an extent because we're not going to have the unlimited funds to try and play exactly how a new manager would come in. At least now we've got a manager in Moyes who's obviously a better manager than when he first came in. He's a manager who's flexible, he's pragmatic, he plays to his players' strengths. I think if you look at Amarim, who's come into United, he's just so stubborn, he's not going to change in the way he plays. For us to get someone like that, I'm not saying we would have, but if we got someone like that in the summer, that could have been an absolute disaster.
I think it's a really good point because I think we can all be. It's not ageist, but because, as Gav rightly says, say if Dyche would have turned around that meeting and said, "No, give us time, I can turn these players around," and we would have struggled over the line. I think maybe you would have gone for a younger manager, but I think we're in danger.
It would definitely wouldn't have been Moyes, would it?
We're in danger of even though Moyes 61 now. He still looks. He seems reinvigorated. He looks well. He speaks well. There's no reason why he cannot be here for the next 2, 3, 4 years. I totally agree with Gav's saying. It's just we're being theoretical because you just wonder what the Freakin group would have done But they've landed on this. You know, at that time we were worried about relegation because, like a lot of clubs do around January, February time, when you're in that mix, you think we're going to have to make a change here because financially we can't afford to go down. And Moyes was the safe option, but we shouldn't be guilty of not thinking that Moyes is not a very, very good manager and coach, because we've seen that in the 8-9 games he's taken charge. Because even though that bottom three, totally agree, so poor. It's again for a second season, so poor. But he's revived. He's revived the final season at Goodison for me. You know, he's revived the fan base again by just, certainly at home, by having a go, which we were missing so much. But so I'm happy. Like, I've got questions as a fan about the structure. But equally, I am happy that Moyes is there and he's doing a great job, and I'm happy for him. But it's just it's up to the Freakins to communicate, and it's going to come out in the wash, isn't it? About what their, you know, maybe the biggest this wider sporting remit looks like, really.
Yeah, what I'm talking about is the structure of the club, not necessarily who the manager is. You know, if they got a different structure than what they were anticipating, they probably have. And you know, and it's possible to have both, isn't it? Like, they haven't got the structures that they want, but I still think Moyes is doing a good job and will do a job in the future. He's only had 10, 11 games, hasn't he? And there's a big restructure in the summer. And one of the things, you know, you have to be, you know, what history tells you in football, if you have a major overhaul of a club and have to bring in 7-8 players, that can be an enormously challenging problem to deal with. So we won't know the answer to these questions for 2 years, will we, really? But what Moyes has done so far has been great, hasn't it? Though we need the result against West Ham, I think.
Well, yeah,
fixtures afterwards.
West Ham is huge, considering we have a break after that for like 2 weeks, and then the next game after that is Liverpool. So the last thing you want is to be left stewing for over 2 weeks with a disappointing draw or defeat. I think there is concerns over the structure / dynamic of how things are going to work. Obviously, Moyes is going to have a lot of influence now, a lot of power, a lot of say on recruitment. Again, it's speculation, but if it's like a vote on which player we should buy, which would be like between Moyes, the new head of recruitment, maybe the CEO
involved and stuff like that.
There's massive concerns with that, because say if it was like a 3 and the CEO and the head of recruitment think vote in favour of each other, and then Moyes is left by himself, but he's the one who's managing the player. That's just an absolute nightmare, isn't it?
I'd say that's I'm not a big fan of that. I would imagine I said to you on Friday.
We're not saying this is the case right now.
No, I'm not saying no. But that's that's generally speaking, when you have a group of people and there's a sort of voting position, that's what can happen, isn't it? And what I said on Friday, I still think stands is we get off too much on this director of football management relationship. I think the day-to-day run of the club, the biggest, most important relationship is between the head of performance and the manager. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest relationship, because that dictates what how your squad's performing and who can play, who can't play.
Surely that'd be the CEO now, though.
No, the head of performance. You're always going to have a head of performance on. Who's looking after the players' fitness and all that type of thing. You know, they have all the analytics under them and stuff like that. Players' rehabilitation. That is a major relationship between that person and the manager, because all your assets are on the pitch, aren't they? There's the stats that 80% of a club, I think I mentioned this on Friday, 80% of a club's wage bill is in their best starting 11. And so you want to keep them fit and firing. So if they're injured or not performing to their optimal level, that's the sort of, can be the director of performance's responsibility, and getting them, as I say, getting them fit again. And when they're fit, and so for the manager, who's depending on the results of that team, has got a vested interest in how they're performing, the decisions they're taking. And so therefore they need to have a really close day-to-day relationship. If they don't, things can go massively wrong. There's some horrendous stories in other clubs where that's not happened. So I think with all this, I think this is important. What we're talking about, this transfer committee, whatever. But I still think that the most important relationship is between the head of performance and the manager.
Personally, I there's no knowledge, but I don't think there'll be like a transfer committee like that. I
know it won't be, but there'll be people involved in it.
And the thing is, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer about if there is a transfer committee. If Moyes he's the final say, he can have his head of recruitment and then different people feeding into him, and then he has his final say. At least you know who's responsible for that. Because you look at, say, like Felwell, if again we're tying him into with transfers, you've got to have some accountability, haven't you? And that's why I'm never sure that a director of football should be accountable for transfers. Surely you have a head of recruitment and manager, because it's such a big role, that one. And I just wonder with Felwell if a lot of his responsibilities were going to be taken away by a CEO and more people feeding into the CEO kind of thing. Like, I'm not against Moyes being the final say in transfers. I think you look over the vast majority. There were a few missteps with Everton. There were definitely a few with West Ham, I think, in later years. But I think he's got a pretty good record in recruitment. It's just more what's maybe the club's bigger philosophy kind of thing. You know, are we just going to go, like, hopefully I don't really want to go down the Theo Walcott paying, maybe 34 million for a 28-year-old, unless, I don't know, that 28-year-old's Mo Salah. Do you know what I mean? Kind of someone an older player who's got durability. But I'd be a bit concerned if we started doing that, because I just think we've been on that slippery slope before. So I'm interested to see, even if Moyes does have the final say, I'm not particularly against that, but is there going to be like an instruction to say, this is how we want to play with the money we got? This is how we want to play it.
I just think that it'll be Moyes, and we'll get ahead of recruitment, and Moyes will obviously work closely with that. I think what you don't want is a yes man. You want a little bit of a challenge, but obviously if Moyes has the final say, that's absolutely fine. I think in the modern day world, a director of football would have come in. I mean, you see the model all the time, and then that director of football is the person who hires the manager. This is how we want to play. This is the blah blah. This is what we want to do. Obviously, that's not the case now. We've gone backwards because of the situation with Dyche and the fact that he needed to be sacked. There was no question about that for me. If that stays like that for the next 2 to 3 years, you would like to think that it's because we've been successful, and it's been a lot down to Moyes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I totally agree with all that.
But there needs to be succession planning as well.
Yeah, and what they're saying is that type of success just means that you can just slot one person in when the other person's going to get that.
We couldn't do that right now, though.
No, absolutely, no.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Like, the very modern one is, say, like a director of football or sporting director, you've got to have a philosophy of play kind of thing. And I think, like we were talking about Enrique last night, or Ancelotti, I'm more of less about the style of play, because I think Moyes understands how Evertonians want us to play. Yeah. Like, I don't think there's many more managers who will understand what gets us going as fans kind of thing. I'm not sure, particularly a club, the West Ham way, the Tottenham way, or the Barcelona. I don't know. I'm more pragmatic kind of thing. I think you kind of got to work with what players you've got and what kind of manager you've got. I'm less about what style of play a director of football and enforcing a style of play all the way down to youth age groups. It's more about how we spend our money, if you know what I mean. That's my...
I think that's what I'm saying, is effectively have the Freakins had to change their philosophy, for want of a better word, because they've sacked Dyche and brought Moyes in.
They probably needed to change original plans.
And that's what I'm saying is, for the purposes of the tape, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have sacked Dyche. No, I'm not, because I've said it.
I knew what you meant.
Absolutely.
What I'm saying is, I know what happens is, they go comments, but you can't, you should have sacked Dyche and all that. Dyche was totally understand why they sacked Dyche, and I totally agree with it. What I'm saying is, the way things have panned out is in the back of the mind is, if we just, one of the Freakins is thinking, if we kept all the Dyche, we would have stayed up and brought in the summer what we wanted to do originally. We've had to compromise and give ourselves a football operation that we weren't envisaging.
It's funny, it's like Roma. Ranieri's doing really well at Roma, isn't it?
Exactly.
Like,
and that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying they shouldn't have sacked Dyche.
We'll put a disclaimer in the description for you.
Yeah. I'll do what did the fella at Man City say? I'll hire the world's most expensive lawyers to. No, but it's all good
we'll
stuff.
Get the silk back.
Yeah, get the silk. We'll talk about it in a bit, won't we?
I don't know if we're gonna have time, to be honest.
No.
These podcasts aren't long enough at the minute.
Yeah.
My whole title is based on the VAR audio release, and we haven't spoken about it once.
But it's an interesting conversation, isn't it?
It is. We've gone off on a tangent, but it is
philosophies
interesting.
of bringing, does it change the Freakins' philosophy of bringing the Moyes in, and it's all tied into Thelwell, and it's lots of stuff.
I think hopefully,
VAR,
we'll find out soon, won't we? Obviously, at the moment we're speculating, but I think we can kind of see where it's going.
Yeah.
But I'm with Paul. Let's see what Moyes can do. He's a better manager than what he was, 12 years ago.
He's a different manager.
He's a different manager, but I do think he's a better manager. There's no way we get a David Moyes if he hadn't managed us previously.
Oh, no, I'm sure about that. I think he'd get David Moyes if on the basis of his West Ham record. If he had not managed that,
he wouldn't come to a relegation battling club though.
I don't know.
And the only club that, well, he said it himself. I'm not going to, go to a team.
I think what I'm saying here is we're not appointed Moyes because we want our manager. Have we? We've appointed Moyes because of his record at West Ham.
Well, yeah, and his record at Everton.
No, possibly.
But no, what I mean is, say that his record at Everton was a different team. That's what I mean. You would still have appointed Moyes, wouldn't you? Forget the association.
Well, if it'd been Aston Villa, yeah, of course you would. But I think it's a record at West Ham is the difference, isn't it? Really.
Okay, let's finally get to the VAR.
That was off the tangent, wasn't it?
You don't want to speak about this VAR audio. That's why you've just been pushing the director of football agenda.
No, it's just an interesting conversation, isn't it, about the Freakins?
Okay, Paul. We did a piece on this yesterday, so you can read it on the Liverpool Echo website. Obviously, the mic'd up show with Michael Owen and Howard Webb. All the audio was being released from the penalty incidents at Everton Manchester United, the Ashley Young foul. You watched it? You seen it?
I've read it. No, I've not.
I mean,
I think I'd just get angry if I watched it.
I'll just read out a segment of Howard Webb's quote. Quote obviously goes on for a little bit, but this is the one that I picked out. So Howard Webb says, quote, "I absolutely acknowledge and accept the angles that were presented to the referee don't show in clear enough view what the lit does. They need to show these angles earlier instead of staying on the wide angle, which doesn't show as clear what needs to be shown." He also says, "I'm not saying the lit actions are a foul." So he has to get that in there, but then he also says, but they need to show this angle to make that determination. And you can actually see, watching back at the actual footage from the day and the camera from behind, Madley, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. That they actually do show the angle, but it's after he's made this decision. So, I mean, did VAR fail, basically, in their job to cover every single aspect of that incident?
Yeah, it's just like, thanks very much for that, Howard. Yeah, that's great. I feel much better after you've give your politicians answer there.
Marked your own homework.
Yeah, it is. Like, that's what it is. I think the show's pointless. I think the show is absolute. But you know what? I say the show's pointless. Our website gets a lot of mileage out of it. So, like, I don't want to be a hypocrite kind of thing. But it is. Like,
think about the clicks.
Mark, yeah. No, but it is. I'm like, that's not being cynical.
You still have quality.
But I honestly, VAR won't go anywhere because the media couldn't let it go anywhere because how much it dominates, like, the post-match kind of narratives now and Monday shows and things like that. We're all guilty of talking about it. But for me, it's just the wrong decision. It's the wrong decision. And if it is a VAR failing, because if they and he is adamant the first one, Maguire, isn't a foul. He's adamant in that, and like, you know what, they've got the courage of convictions, and if the referees looked at that one and thought, you know what, I've got it wrong, whether I agree or not, fair play, you've stood by that, but you've not shown the angles. But then he's kind of backing it up by saying, well, you know, if we did show the angles, I'm not saying it would be a foul. It's a foul. It's a pull on his shirt. Like, whether Young went down theatrically or not, it's a penalty. And like, you knew that was going to come, because I've seen enough of those shows now where it's not good enough for me. It's not good enough. You didn't show the angles. That's not good enough. That is not good enough. You've got the technology. You should be showing the referee all the angles.
I mean, Gav, I'm not questioning anyone's integrity, but I do think it's only right that you can question a player's performance, you can question a referee's performance. You should be able to question a VAR official's performance as well. If you look at, you know, you were at the game, obviously, the United game, you obviously could have watched it on the telly, it doesn't really matter. The Beto goal that he scored, the amount of time that they took...
4 or 5 minutes, wasn't it?
For that goal to be given, it seemed to me that they were literally checking every angle, and that's fine. Check every angle to see if it was offside. Pull it back. Was he offside there, or that's fine. But if you're going to do that with one decision, then you need to do it with every other decision as well, don't you? And they quite clearly didn't do that with the Ashley Young one.
In terms of giving it the rigorous going over that they did to the...
Well, I think that's a good way of putting it, yeah.
And the Mateta goal at Palace was the same, wasn't it? You know, not just for reasons of balance, and not just
that's
everything.
Fine. That's absolutely.
But I totally get that. I think there's a couple of things that come out of this. The first thing is, we should have VAR officials who are independent and fully trained up that's the thing. There shouldn't be referees.
That's
the first thing. There should be totally this lack of independence between the two groups. I think that's wrong.
Shout,
That's just there should be specialists because it's not refereeing, is it? I mean, okay, you need a bit of refereeing now, but how it operates, it's not refereeing, is it? And you're seeing the impact of that in that decision. To be honest with you, as you say, I get the waste of time, and it didn't answer any questions or queries for me. First of all, what it didn't answer the question was whether it was the VAR intervened correctly because it was a clear and obvious error.
They didn't answer.
If you have a look at the guides given by the Premier League at the start of the season, the thing about referees call and it's going to be a high bar to intervene. And one of the things is, it has to be, a clear and obvious error, and there'll be a high bar to that. Well, why was it a clear and obvious error to intervene? That wasn't addressed at all by the VAR or the referee. The referee said, didn't he, that his angle, he thought Maguire had more of his arm around Young than what it was. Okay, it's just fine. Is that a clear and obvious error from his angle? I don't think it is. Just the way the angle refereeing, and I'm not sure whether. And interestingly, when you had that committee, that other committee, about the decision, the Premier League one, is one of them said that it shouldn't have been referred by the VAR, didn't it, because it wasn't a clear and obvious error, and that wasn't addressed last night in that why they intervened in the first place. That is the first question you should ask. What they were basically doing is they were re-refereeing it. They were judging it by the re-refereeing, which is not what VAR is for. Is, as far as I'm concerned, is from the referee's decision, he's made that there is contact by Maguire. He's given a penalty from his angle, from his best play, his best place to it. That's fine. That should stand. It's if Maguire had not touched Young and he'd given a penalty, and realised, oh sorry, he's not touched Young, that is a clear and obvious error, But he had, and I think if you soon as touch play in the penalty area, you're leaving, giving the referee a decision to make. So that's a really disappointing thing from me in the first instance last night, is they did not address the decision in the context of the Premier League rules and their guidance at the start of the season, that there's going to be a high bar, it's going to be referee's call, VAR will only intervene if there's a very high chance of a clear and obvious error, and they didn't address that last night. That's the first thing. The second thing I'd say is, that is on this, and come back in time, another rant here, is, you can't split up the De Ligt and Maguire challenges in two separate incidents.
Which
they're saying on the VAR thing, and even Webb last night, the dive by Young, or whatever you would call it, what they were basically insinuating, was not just justified compared to the Maguire challenge, but he was getting challenged at the same time by De Ligt.
It's not like Maguire pushed him, he got up and then he called him. It was all in the same instance.
He's going to ground because of the De Ligt thing, not because of the Maguire thing, or a combination of both. That's the second thing. And the third, and he never didn't address that. And the third thing is, I think, greater guidance. The learning point here is greater guidance should be given to VAR about what they give the referee. I mean, what Webb was saying, wasn't he, that even if they give, given all the angles, the referee wouldn't have give it. Well, you would say that, Howard, wouldn't you? To be fair, but that would have been, if the referee had all the angles and still said not a penalty, it makes it a little bit more, a bit more comfortable is the word, but you're less dissatisfied, aren't you? And I think those are the three things. I think the angle thing was just a shambles, wasn't it? He's quite clearly took them twice.
It comes down to what we were speaking about earlier, where we were talking about Felwell communicating, club PR. That is like a PR. Like, I know it's an independent Sky Sports. It's a PR. Yeah. It's Webb comes on, I'll say this, done. Sites like ourselves pick it up, national newspapers, and then we move on to the next shambles, which will be this weekend. And that, well done, Howard. No, you exactly right. You have failed in your job there. And I would get rid of it. I think it's too far down the road, but I would get it because I think it's made standards of refereeing worse, in this country. And it was a shambles.
Well, it's over analysis now, isn't it?
And just imagine, by the way, if that would have been United. You think the coverage it got from Everton? Just imagine if that would have been United.
Don't go me off on that rant. I'll go off on a rant there.
Yeah, what would have happened if that was at United?
Though, to be fair, United, I mean, Ten Hag lost his job on an incorrect penalty award at the West Ham, didn't he? Strange enough, but that's a separate issue to me. But the issue here to me is not whether it's a penalty or not. It's quite clear that on the day there's a clear probability that the referee and the VAR didn't follow the guidance at the start. I was given at the start of the season, and the VAR didn't follow what the process was. And if Webb's admitting it, didn't he, that they never got the angles they should have done, he's basically saying that's short. I'm saying we made a bit of a cock up here, lads.
You know what? I know, why can't he say that? Rather than adding. But even if we did show the angles, it doesn't mean we give it. It's just
doesn't mean it's a penalty.
Politicians
no,
speak.
exactly.
It's just,
they're just trying to be transparent and they're not.
Yeah, it's a waste of time. It's an absolute waste of time, that show.
It fails because it raises even more questions than what there was before.
This is the problem, though, why people start questioning integrity, and that's not what we're trying to do.
That's why there's no follow-up. Michael Owen will go, thanks, Howard. Now to the next incident.
It's so contrived.
It doesn't ask the question. Howard, does this fit the Premier League criteria at the start of the season? What's a fair and
if you watch it,
clear and obvious
they do show the angle, but it's after he's made this decision. So he's basically said, you're right, and then it's bang, it comes up on the screen. Go back and watch it. I think either way, clear and obvious error. It wasn't a clear and obvious error. Huh? For the purpose of balance, I think you could potentially argue that it's not a foul from Maguire.
It's a soft penalty.
Yeah, it's a soft penalty, the referee, that's what he gave it for originally, wasn't it? So if they'd said, listen, Andrew, doesn't look like it's you've made a clear and obvious error there. Sorry, it looks like you've made a clear and obvious error there, so we think it's not. But they mentioned delete for once in this whole process, and then it's kind of like they just stop. They don't mention it again, and quite clearly you can see if that's not a penalty, the Maguire one, that can have that. But the delete one is quite clearly a penalty, and they don't show him. They don't give Madley the opportunity to say, well, have you seen this one instead? What they clearly have done for Beto's goal. They've covered every single angle. I get that.
I mean, again, we don't want to conscious of time here, but the VAR, he said, I've not got a listen. If I've not got a problem if collectively the VAR and the referee and Webb think that that's not a penalty. What I'm querying here is the process, whether the process was followed.
It's muddy,
and I think, as you say, it's just muddied the process to me about why it was in. There's no clear evidence suggests it was a clear and obvious error because it was obviously contact from Maguire. And the referee's given it, as you said on the day, from the angle I had. It's not up. It's not. I don't think it's VAR's role to say that, intervene and say, here's all the other angles on the pitch. It's the referee's call. He's given it, and it might have been a soft penalty. I tell you what, I've seen loads of soft penalties given this season. That's the thing.
That makes
and that's the thing. We've seen plenty of soft penalties this season, and that because it's the referee's call. Okay, it's fine, but it's not clear and obvious. It can be both, can't it? It can not be a clear and obvious error.
And not to go there,
a soft penalty.
But it does lead to conspiracy theories, and then you start going, well, why would United get that? Because they leave it,
it open. 5 o'clock till we talk about that.
Right, well, we are running out of time.
Yeah.
So we'll finish off on these last 2 points. I realise that we haven't even spoke about West Ham. But we're going to have it. We're going to have an in-depth Friday pod. But to be honest, I don't think I'm going to be on it. Gav's not going to be on it. I don't think Paul's on it. Chris is on it he's getting a guest in. So we'll.
Have I been shot for flat? You told me for.
That's why I've got you in.
I thought that today was for Monday.
No, yo.
So I'm dropped. So you're publicly telling me. I'm dropped for Friday.
Hang on. I told you Chris was bringing a guest in Friday.
He told me Chris was bringing a guest in, but I didn't know Friday. And I bear in mind Chris being brought guests in the past without being on.
His blood's boiling now.
It's just the public. It's the public shame of it. In fact, I'm going to go to the press tomorrow and say I've been dropped. I'm not happy. I'll be speaking to the Echo editor on Monday about a transfer request.
Maybe we need a VAR review on this.
VAR review, yeah. No, I'm only joking. No, that's fine. Yeah,
there might be space, but as far as, I mean, to be honest, we're at the whim of David Moyes' press conference times because they're all over the place at the minute.
No, Fridays.
He's busy now.
What? No, I'm busy. Yeah.
Couldn't make it anyway.
Yeah, couldn't make it. Yeah. Quick thing about West Ham, I think it's a big game for us. I'll tell you why. Is because, and this is goes back to Moyes doing a good job. Blah blah. If you haven't load of draws, when that sequence of draws ends, and there's a result, you've got to make sure it's a win, not a loss. right? Especially because not only got Liverpool, we've got Arsenal then, haven't you? Like the next, and then we got City again at some point. So,
what's a 2-week break? I don't want to be left stewing for 2 weeks.
I think it's a vital that we win.
Yeah, it's a big
on Saturday
big
for lots of reasons. Carries on the sequence, 9 games unbeaten, and then we've got a few hard games. So I think it's not a must-win game, and I tell you what, it might get caught up in the relegation stuff. It's a must-win game just for the general feel-good, well-being, and all this type of stuff. You know, we should have kept Dyson a job rather than bring more in. But no, seriously,
I'm going to clip that bit.
No, it's fine. I think it's a must-win game on.
Right, well, we'll do predictions, but I know you want to talk about a topic regards to Lawrence Rabanowitz is basically leading Everton's defence against Burnley's claim. I know there was an article in The Lawyer website.
This has come up this morning. It's been publicised, hasn't it?
Couldn't read it because it was behind a subscription paywall.
Yeah, if it's The Lawyer, probably even if it could read, I couldn't understand it. You know,
too many big words.
Yeah, so this goes back to the 21-22 relegation fight, wouldn't it? And there was talk of legal action from Leeds, strange enough, wasn't it? I think Leicester were mentioned in dispatches, really, or some point the following year, Burnley, and so it's going to court in the summer, I think, and it will be very interesting to.
The Leeds one's been dropped now.
I think the others have been dropped.
It's a good job, innit? Considering we've just got the CEO.
Yeah.
That would have been an interesting one, wouldn't
it? To be honest with you, I don't really know much more than that. I would imagine now, and not for me to prejudge a court case, that's very difficult to prove that Everton's overspending caused us to go down.
Yeah. I guess
cause and effect. It'd be an interesting test case, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I would find it very.
What if Man City are found guilty? You know, can we sue Man City kind of thing? Because
that's a separate issue.
Everyone probably could, couldn't they?
That's a separate issue in itself. I mean, and in the NFL, you can't do that, can you? They've got like a deal with it that you can't sue other teams. You know, and seeing that we want to be like the NFL, don't do the Premier League. You think that's something that they want to bring in. But yeah, it's an interesting test case. It'd be. You know what courts like? It'd be interesting to see there'd be some stuff put out there in the public domain that you weren't privy to.
Yes.
I can't see much happening.
I guess we'll have something on the Liverpool Echo website potentially over the next day or two.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah,
on the
Dave
claim.
Carl and Joe, see what's going on. It's just I'm glad when it'll be all forgotten about. Court claims, PSR, all of it.
I don't think it's ever going to be forgotten about, is it? Really?
I think it's like VAR. I think it's all part of the big fun of football now kind of thing.
It's how we started the pod content.
It is.
And that's what it is. It's just the sort of content, isn't it? Really
keeps it going.
And keeps it going. Keeps the drama going during the summer and stuff. And when there's no football, it's content, isn't it? But yeah, it's an interesting test case. There was an interesting precedent. There was was it Derby? Didn't they end up having to pay people? Was it Derby and Sheffield Wednesday? Was it? I can't remember. Clubs in the Championship where there was payments made, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Compensation as such. So it's an interesting.
Was that West Ham? You're talking about West Ham when they had Mascherano and Tevez?
Well, that was Sheffield United, wasn't it? Yeah, that's a separate issue, wasn't it? Yeah. This was in the Championship. You probably know better than me, wasn't it?
I think Derby stayed up despite all the admins, and Sheffield Wednesday went down. I think there was something.
Yeah. I can't remember the details. Somebody out there will know. But so there's precedent, but this is slightly different.
Well, we'll keep an eye on that. And there's another podcast where it's not really football related; it's just off the field related.
Yeah, it'll keep us going during the summer. Super Silky, be good to get somebody on the pod. I bet he knows a few Manchester
fee probably too big for this podcast.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll sort a book out for him.
Have you seen his suits?
No.
That's why he's called the Silk, isn't it? Because of his suits.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Well, we can talk football for the last 30 seconds to the minute of this podcast. We can do predictions for West Ham.
Win 2-0.
2-0.
Yeah, I think we'll win. I just looked at their team the other night against Newcastle. They've got some really good players, West Ham. Really good players. But yeah, I think 2-1. 2-1 win Everton.
Maybe not done as well as maybe what West Ham fans would have liked, Potter. So it's interesting dynamic because we were potentially interested the same week Potter goes to West Ham.
Yeah, fascinating.
We get more as well. So
good shout.
Interesting. I'm going to go... I'll go 2-0. We are conceding though a little bit, aren't we? Try and get a clean sheet.
Some good forward players. I think it could be a good game. It could be a good game.
I think he'll be looking to restructure the defence in the summer.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. You don't expect O'Brien to continue on as a right back, would you?
No, I think Tarkowski's place is under threat.
Interesting. Again, another podcast in itself.
Yeah. Well, that's what we were going to buy and stuff in the summer pod, isn't it? Who's vulnerable within that? I think he is under threat, Tarkowski.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely do that show in the summer. My final thoughts, just our interview that Chris Beasley did with Martin Dobson, that is live on the Royal Blue YouTube channel and all audio platforms. Really good, long hour interview. So it's about Everton in the 70s, as well as he was English football's first ever £300,000 player. So go and give that a watch. Go and give that a listen. Any final thoughts before we finish off?
Wide ranging. I think this Thirlwell Director of Football stroke transfer committee discussion has got much legs to it, hasn't it? It'll be interesting to see how the structure goes in place and who we recruit in the next few weeks, stroke months, and it's something that probably needs revisiting at some point.
Definitely. I think the problem that we've got is now, you don't want the season to fizzle out, but you're almost looking like
to the summer.
You're so eager to the summer now to come round, aren't you?
Yeah,
it's still a long way away.
Yeah, it was a good discussion. It's not like there's no rights or wrongs about it. It's good to be in this position, isn't it? That we're staying up, with being to the stadium. It's fantastic. It's good. It's good. It feels good. And like I say, hopefully win on Saturday before the tough April. But it feels a lot better place, doesn't it, Everton at the moment?
And thanks to Howard Webb for clarifying the penalty decision against Man United.
Can't wait for the next one.
Wonder if Howard would come on this show. Maybe we get him on like a remote one.
It'd be a very interesting conversation.
Yeah. Absolutely. We're looking forward to West Ham and hopefully get a win. As mentioned, we are going to be back Friday for a more in-depth preview show of West Ham, so keep an eye out for that one.
Am I in the reserves? Am I on Friday? Yeah, pod reserves.
We might sub you on.
Yeah.
Let's speak to Chris when we leave. Right. He's in the office, isn't he?
It's all right.
That is all for today's show. Please remember to give us a like and subscribe to the channel. Most importantly, enjoy your day, enjoy the rest of your week. That goes for you as well, Gav.
Does it? Yeah, I've got other things on Friday now.
I've been Ian Croll, joined by Paul Wheelock and Gav Buckland, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.